Bava Metzia, page 17. We'll start on page 16b. We are 12 lines from the bottom of the page. Secret of wealth. The rabbis come up with a wonderful idea how a person can be wealthy. Later on, we're going to visit that suggestion and much more. But let's start with the issue left yesterday, namely issue of trust. Someone already get caught in a bet din, or being caught but being not faithful, not truthful, and now it's another case. Can you say that you do not trust that person once he get caught lying, you cannot trust him anymore, or only for that particular situation, and much more? Let's start. אמר רבי אבאו אמר רבי יוחנן, המוצא שטר חוב בשוק. Here they're speaking about situation one. You walk in the market and is a promissory note, meaning in those days, in order to make deal happen, the lender wants to get a confirmation that he will be able to get his money back. So you get to the rabbinic court and you get a special promissory note, and now all of a sudden the third party found a document that stated that Reuven, Mr. A, lend money to Mr. B, Shimon, in X amount of money. So part of that is the henpek, which means when one party paid or one party did transaction with the other, the bet din gets the statement of approval. So here they said, Af al pi shekatuv bo henpek, even if a ratification of the rabbinic court is written in it, which means that it's stated that this promissory note is real, is not fake, is have a approval of the bet din, that this promissory note were never paid. Nevertheless, lo yachaziro laba'alim, he will not return it to the creditor, to the lender. The reason for that, obviously, lo mibaya hecha de lo katuv bo henpek. We understand if there's nothing written there, meaning there is no ratification of the rabbinic court, that you don't have to return it. The ikalememar katav limvod v'lo lalva. It can be a situation of two parties, let's call them name, Reuven and Shimon, that make a deal of Reuven is going to lend X amount of money to Shimon, and they have a promissory note between the parties, and all of a sudden Shimon decided not to get the loan, or Reuven decided not to give the loan. So whatever the reason is, if you take this promissory note and give it to the creditor, you create a situation that it may happen he will go after someone who's not owing money, and obviously that's wrong. Even it's written there a ratification statement, which means it's written there that this ratification is this note has been ratified by the court, which examined the note and the signatures of the witnesses and found everything to be correct and in order. Nevertheless, lo yachazir, should not return. Dechayshinan leperaon. We are concerned that it may happen that this guy Shimon already paid Reuven, and now all of a sudden, because the promissory note was left, Reuven will have a repayment twice over something that already get paid, and obviously that's totally wrong, and therefore it's prohibited. The rabbis derive from different sources that we should not by any means do such an action without consulting with a prominent posek, and there is a notion of Magid Mishnah on the Rambam that did it just because of act of piety, like Midat Chasidut. The normally Melech speaks about fulfilling even Mashe Lo Katuv, even thing that we interpreted, even it's not written lucidly in the text, but the derivative that it's total wrong, and you know in your heart that it can create a situation of repayment and you should not do it. Here is the question of the ATV, Rabbi Yomi and Rabbi Abau. Rabbi Yomi came in and he raised an objection based on the Mishnah we're going to study on page 20. כל מעשה בדין הרי זה יחזיר, which means any time that you have a court enactment, which means you have a promissory note that has been authenticated by the rabbinic court to its owner, so you don't have any concern of repayment and the person should return it. So here you see the opposite of what we said. Amar lei, Rabbi Abau returned an answer to Rabbi Yomi and he said, listen, Yirmi Abni, he wants to show his dearness, his connectedness. He said, he wasn't biologically, obviously, he's his son, but he said, Yirmiyah, Jeremiah, my son, lo kol ma'aseh bet din shavim. He said to him, not all the rabbinic court enactments are equal. It means that it can be lost for all kind of reasons, but here we are specifically dealing with a very painful situation. The circumstance here is Ela shekugon shehuchzak kafra. This person already caught his lying in the past and he's lost his credibility. And now Rashi tells us, I'm reading Rashi, 2 lines from the bottom of the page, זה כפרן פעם אחרת, לפיכך אינו נאמר לומר פרעתי והיית יחזיר. Rashi tells us that because it's already a situation that the person will caught lying once, then it's a problem. How can you trust a person who's already caught lying? The Rishonim, the early rabbis, have a discussion, is that apply only to that specific situation, that specific line, or it's not necessarily in this particular loan, but anything lying in the past. But anyway, so because it's such a painful circumstance that the person already caught denying not truthful, so therefore, if he claims the debt was unpaid, his claim is not accepted. Rava challenged that and he said, Amar Rava umishum duchzak kafran chada zimna tu lo para klal. And this is something that even in modern days court, you see it in the federal court and many others, these type of questions, they ask the question, let's have a presumption that the person have a presumption status for all kind of reasons that denies his debt one time, in one case. You mean to say that now he is denied for anyone? Rashi tells us, Bitmiya, it's a question, in a simple language, so once he caught, okay, but that make a general statement for him as a person of character. Tosfot tell us that is a reiuta, there is a point here. If the lender lost it, it means that it's already davar paidu, that it means it's already paid to him. Why? Tosfot come up with ingenious, brilliant idea. Tosfot said that a person will have a valuable, something that the person really valued, he will not lose so quickly. And therefore, it's the lereuta, is the fear that it's already promissory note that was paid. And here we need to digress for a second to something we learned in the past, not only the previous daf, but in the past, which is 2 types of promissory note. One is called chaltata and one is called adrachta. Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is the shtar chaltata. Chaltata. Let's use name. Reuven was sued by Shimon. Reuven is the nitba, the defender. Shimon is the claimant, is the tovea. Big session, several sessions in the rabbinic court. Eventually the Bet Din, the three rabbis, come to conclusion as rabbinic authorized judges that really Reuven owes Shimon money. Unfortunately, Reuven did not follow, not pay. The Bet Din, by force of circumstance, needs to go to the next step. Modern days, those who own rental properties, I'm sure they're familiar with the process that eventually you go to repossession by the sheriff. Those days, the Bet Din, they go ahead and bring an appraisal. They go down to his estate. Doesn't mean that the Bet Din itself, they sent the appointee, or potentially they can go. But they have evaluation of Reuven estate. Upon having evaluation and they knew what's involved, now they go to the next level and they give him shtar hachlata, which means in Aramaic it's called chaltata, which means achlatat aneches. The way that the Rabbi Moshe explained, it's not what we study igrot shum. I'm going to study again on page 20. It's just the note, the rabbinic authority, the Bet Din, that allows Shimon, the claimant, to, after their evaluation, to go and possess either all or part of the estate of Reuven. The second one is called adarta. Adarta is come from the book of Shoftim, chapter 20, verse 43. Kitru et Binyamin hirdefu hidrichu. In a sense, as Gemara in Bava Kamma 112b said, that it's like giving the right to chase, in a sense, giving the, in our case, Shimon, the legal document drafted by the rabbinic court authorizing Shimon, a creditor, to locate and take possession of any property belonging to Reuven, to debtor, in the payment of his death. So in our sugya, they tell us, matnitin, our Mishnah speaks about what? The document involved here is bishtar chaltata ve'ad rachta, ukde Rabbi Zera. And it followed the view of Rabbi Zera. So it means the Mishnah referring in really modern days, it's not of owner sell, it's foreclosure, which is you go by the bill of foreclosure or bill of authorization, which are not subject to repayment, and that's a shtar, that's a note that Shimon, the creditor, received from the Bet Din as re'aya, as milve re'aya, as the proof to the creditor that he can go ahead and continue in the process. There is a discussion among the Rishonim, among the Tosfot. First is, if the malveh, the creditor, lost the shtar, lost the note, what do? In a sense, is a re'uta. Why it's a re'uta? We tried to explain a little bit earlier. If he lost just the shtar, just the promissory note by itself, it's re'uta. But if he lost that note, use a modern day, with $10,000, with the $10,000, so you may say that's not re'uta, because a person in general, as the Tosfot explained to us, very careful not to lose valuable that he had, which is lead us to the next discussion. Do we differentiate between promissory note alone or promissory note that combine with other values such as cash? So the Rishonim, the early rabbis, try to say that sometimes it can be a clandestine deal, can be knunya, can be set up. And that's one of the things that we have to examine very carefully. There's a story about the Sma, who was one of the luminary rabbis in the late 18th century, early 19th century, and also Bala Levush in his book, Ir Shushan. You have a discussion, and I'm just converted to a discussion in the modern day, in 2020. You have a check, right? So nowadays, right, one of the options of payment is check. Think about someone who come to us in the Bet Din and said, here is signed check. So signed check can be potentially Reuven gave to Shimon check with his signature, and can be even empty check. And he said, Shimon, I trust you, okay? Go with this check and pay whatever it's cost. You have my signature and you have an open check. Now, Reuven come to Bedin and says, guess what? Somebody stole this check from me. It is true, I recognize my signature, but it's stolen. And he brings a proof. For example, he said, and that's really touchy, it's walking on the fine line, on the tightrope. He says, look at the warnings on the check, paid to, or the amount, and look at my signature. It's two different handwritings. Does he have the ne'emanu, that he has the trust to say that this check was stolen from me is absolute truth or not? Why? Generally speaking, we assume that people will not give signed check to other people without clear statement of amount. Now, he said it was stolen from me. He said, I don't have a commitment. So it's a machloket between the Sma and Bala Levush. Bala Levush said that he doesn't have a commitment. The Sma said that there are circumstances that people give other people an open check with their signatures. And I saw it in my previous shul. They did it once in a men's club. They sent someone to buy wines for the holidays. And several people said, we want this and this and this, and we don't know how much we're going to negotiate, and the bottom line, we trust you, so they give him a signed check. I don't say it's right, but it happens. So that's the claim of the Sma. By the way, while we're talking about the Sma, it's a famous story, amazing story about him. But once he have a din Torah, he have a court battle with someone, and he didn't want anyone to recognize and be kind of show favoritism. So he having a very far away city, rabbinic court, a session as a climate, and it was him as a climate, and the other guy was a defender, and it was a session. None of the three rabbinic judges that sat there, the three dayanim, was aware that he is the Sma against another one. They just treated it as two people. All of a sudden, they rule against him. They rule in favor of the other party. So when the session is over, he went to the Av Bet Din, to the head of the rabbinic court, and he challenged that, and he said, it doesn't make sense why you rule. So he said, let me show you something. And he took him to the library. He opened the library, he took out the book called Sma, that this Dayan, not even aware that the person who wrote is in front of him. And he opened the page and he showed him what exactly several years earlier the Sma wrote. And after he realized, he's not only admitted that he was wrong, he said, look how amazing is the subject of Zehirut min Negi'ah. The judge has to be careful not to be any attachment or favor, because here, if it's me, I don't even realize that I wrote it, and now it turns out that I thought because it's my claim against someone that it's something different. Tosfot really expand on the whole idea of knunya and all kind of surreptitious clandestine deals. So Rava continue, and in a way the Gemara expand on that and said, V'chafran, when we speak here about one who denies his death, the way that Rabbi Abahu explained, Ho'il ve'atal lidan. So since we have come to us, so let's expand. Neima bei milta, bring a chidush, bring something new to us. The Amar of Yosef bar Yomi, Amar of Nachman. Amru lo tzeten lo. Here's the Bet Din said to the loved, the one who borrowed, go and give the other litigant what you owe him. And Rashi explained, שפסקו לו דינו בדין, שצוו עליו הדין לו, the Bet Din rules, you have to go ahead and pay the creditor, the money that he asking you to pay. Page 17, Ve'amar, and the loved, the debtor said later, and Rashi emphasized, he said that tzav gamur, that it's like they commended him, and he said, parati, he said, I repaid him the way that the bedding required me. So here the Gemara said, ne'eman, he's credible, which is, Rashi explained, לאחר זמן פרעתי על פי בדין, נאמר ובשבועת הסת. So here Rashi wants to emphasize that they use the שבועת הסת, and as we discussed on page 5, בא מלווה לכתוב. Now if the creditor comes and he wants the rabbinic court to write in a authorization for him to appropriate the property of the debtor. So the Rashi explained that's part of the shtar adachta, that לפנינו לכתוב לו הדachta עליו אין כותבים ונותנים לו. So אין כותבים ונותנים לו. The Rif and the Rambam, the Tur expand the reasoning for that, but the word here is chayav ata liten lo. So it means Rabbi Moshe Yosef said that it's not the absolute final. It means that it's in part chiyuv. You are liable to give him. The language is liable, meaning that it's not completely the process by saying go and give him. Ve'amar, the loved, the person who took the money debtor, he said, parati, I repay, a non-eman. So Rashi here tells us something very important. Rashi tells us, when you see it also in Gemara Shavuot 41, he said, דכיוון דתחילתו הוא צריך לטובו לדין, אין דרכו למהר לפרוע שיפסקו דינו פסק גמור. Rashi tells us that people not rush to pay what they own, which is a well-known concept. בא מלווה, so therefore, בא מלווה לכתוב, the creditor come and wants to write the שטר הדחתא, כותבים ונותנים לו, so they write an authorization and give the document to the creditor. Why? Because we know clearly that the debtor, the loved, did not pay him. Little different is the memra of Rav Zvid. He said, Rav Zvid משמד רב נחמן אמר, בין צתן לו, בין חייב אתה ליתן לו, as we mentioned earlier from the Moshe Yosef, it's a sensitive, the different, what they said, ואמר פרעתי נאמן, if he said I repaid, it's okay, we take his word, and the Rabbeinu Asher said, it's a serious possibility that it's already paid. And they said, in Bamalve, so the result of that, in both circumstances, Bamalve lichtov, if the creditor come and about to write the authorization of adachta, ein kodvim venotnim lo. You don't do that because he may already paid him. אלא איכא לפלוגי, הכא הוא דאיכא לפלוגי. If you want to differentiate between the two, that's the way you distinguish it. How? אמרו לו, בית דין said to him, צא, תן לו. ואמר פרעתי, he said I paid, I will pay. והעדים מעידים אותו שלא פרעו. And the עדים, the witnesses said, no, he did not pay. הוחזק כפרן לאותו ממון. So here, he has the assumption of the status who denies his debt. When it's come to that specific money, which means ראינו שהוא משקר, we see that he is not truthful, that he is lying. And Rashi explained, בפנינו תבעו לפרוע לו על פי בית דין ולא פרעו. So it's clear. חייב אתה ליתן לו, ואמר פרעתי, והעדים מעידים אותו שלא פרע. The other way around, if the court said you are liable to give him what you owe him, and as a result, the other party, the debtor, said, I repay the debt, and witnesses testified that he did not repay the debt, והעדים מעידים אותו שלא פרע, לא הוחזק כפרן לאותו ממון. מהי טעמה? So here, we do not hold him that a presumption status, the one denied his debt, we do not assume that they have that status. מהי טעמה? השתמותהו כמשתמט מיני, סבר דמיינו ברבנאי בדיני. There are a language that people behave sometimes. He said, since the court has not yet finalized the verdict, I can delay payment, and unfortunately you see people behave like that a lot of time. Until, okay, when the Dayanim, when the sages in the court investigate my case further, so I'm not actually liable to pay until we see it in writing, the verdict, that is finalized and I have to pay. As long as I don't have that, use the time. So the Shvut Yaakov asked a question. Based on that question of ne'emanut, of credibility, he asked how you treated the situation. A fellow, let's say Reuven, sent with Shimon packages of money. Let's say Reuven owed Shimon X amount of money, and he sent him a bag full of packages. And Shimon took it, and Reuven said, I counted carefully, and every pack contained, 100 bills. Now, in a regular manner of banks, what we know, that you have a special room, you can count your money or on the front of the teller. But this fellow took it, and then he claimed that he counted, and some of them do not have hundreds, some of them have, for example, instead of thousands, 900. So, do you say the burden of proof is upon the claimant? So the Shvut Yaakov discussion, if you use umdena, based on our sugya, trace the situation, one of the parties, the Shvut Yaakov mentioned, was have his son getting married. And the father of the chassan, the father of the groom, sent certain amount of money to the other party, the father of the kala, and the other party claimed that when he opened it later on, it was different. It was a real case there. So you go by the other, by the umdana or not, and part of his mahalach was based on our sugya. Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now we bring the sugya of Huchzak Kafran. מנה לי בידך, ועלה אומר, אין לך בידי כלום. So here, if one says to another, I have 100 maneh, those days was the currency was a dinar, in your possession that you borrow from me? And the other said, nothing is yours in my possession. The witnesses said that the way the claimant said it is true and he owed him. וחזר ואמר פרעתי, and he come and he said, I repaid it. וכזך כפרן אותו ממון. We have the presumptive status of one who denies his debt with regard to that money. And here is a story, again, you have to go to the mindset of those days, and the story of the Shabtai Brei de Rabbi Marinos. Part of the agreement is the Nedunya, which is the commitments of the family of the bride to, the family, I meant the father of the groom. Those days, most of the grooms were yeshiva boys, right? For example. So the father of the groom wrote to his soon-to-be daughter-in-law, כתב לה לחלתי אצטלה דמילתה בכתובתה. So he gives her in a ketubah, later on she became his daughter-in-law, a clock of fine wool, and that's part of what the rabbis put together a marriage contract, which is part of the nedunya, part of the assets that she received upon getting married, and it was written part of the ketubah. And part of the ketubah contract, as we studied in the past, in both Tractate Gittin and Yevamot, is the amount of money that the husband commit to his wife in case of death or divorce take place. So vekabla, so here you have a situation that he accepted upon himself the status of a guarantor for the contract. Okay, so he basically guaranteed to pay. And it turns out that we don't know the specific, but either she became a widow or divorced, but anyway, irkas ktubata. What happened is, when she come after Shabtai, it was irkesa. And we learned several times that in Ketubah, if there is a irkesa, always recommended to have a copy, but it's like a direct copy of the Ketubah, that here when she come to ask to go after Shabtai, Amar lehu, Shabtai said to or Amar la, Lo hayu dvarim ma'olam. Nothing happened. I don't know what you're talking about. I never commit myself to be responsible to this clock. Atu sahadei ve'amrei. So here we have a witnesses that comes in and said, Ein katabla. They said he's not truthful. It is true what she said. He wrote it for her. So they denied his Shabtai's testimony. Lesof, after some times, he came, Amar lehu, Shabtai came before the Bet Din, and he said, Pra'atiha, I gave her the clock. Ata, some said Atu, lekamei de Rabbi Chia. So Shabtai came before the great Rabbi Chia. Amar lei, Rabbi Chia said to Shabtai, Uchzakta kafran leota itztela. He said, you already have assumed the presumptive status of one who denies his debt with regard to that clock. His claim was therefore not accepted, even by means of an oath. So the Rishonim of a discussion is that specifically if he kafar bebet din, if he denied in the court, or if it was out of the court session. Is a discussion that some say that it's only derech knas, some say that he just want to annoy the other party. Anyway, Amar Rabbi Abin, Amar Rabbi Il'ah, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, haya chayav lechavero shvu'ah. One who's obligated to take an oath to counter another person's claim brought against him. V'amar nishbati, and the fellow said, I already did it. V'aidim aidim eto shelo nishbat, the witness said that never did it. הוחזק כפרן לאותה שבועה. He is assumed the status of one who denies his obligation with regard to that specific oath. It's a discussion, the Rif, the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch in Choshen Mishpat 87, if it was that specific day at the Bet Din or not. The Rabbi of Lomja, Rav Gamliel, have a discussion over someone who was already suspected that he was a ganav, that he was a thief. So the Bet Din wants him to take an oath that he will not steal anymore. And the question is, we all know that Nishba v'omed ma'al Sinai, that the person from the time that all of us are commit ourselves in Har Sinai, and Moin Nedorim said, based on Tehillim, Nishbati v'akayim al ishmo mishpetei tzidkecha. So the way Malkiel, the Rabbi of Lomja, bring the Chut HaShani, which one of the Chiburim of the Chavot Yair, he said that the oath, the Shvuah, is only applies to L'She'avar, to something that happens in the past, and not L'Haba. L'Haba is Lo Shayach Shvuah, based on what we study in Gemara and Shvuot. And now Rabbi Abba expand this halacha. Amrua Kamei de Rabbi Abba, the disciple said before Rabbi Abba, Amar לו מסתברא מילתא דרבי אבין, נתחייב שבועה בבית דין, אבל חייב עצמו שבועה. Is the two versions if נאמן or not. But anyway, it's all applied to take an oath before the Bet Din. But if he himself commit himself to Shvuah, we said that he is נאמן, כי עבד איניש דמקרא ואמר, so that's as the way that possible that a person can do. And Rashi tells us, לא אעשה מה שלא חייבוני בדין אלא אני בעצמי, ואין זו סרבנות וחרטה לדחייה בעלמא. So Rashi here is so smart in the psychological effect of people, that people try to postpone things. Attorneys will tell you they don't have a solution, they keep postponing the case. So that's a language of people, they try to postpone things, but that's התמנה מאמר רבי אבינה, אמר רבי הילה, אמר רבי יוחנן, האחד לחברו שבועה בבית דין, ואמר נשבעתי בעדים בית דין שלא נשבע, הוחזק כפרן לאותה שבועה. So first he denies, then he changed. So the question is, he really lost his credibility. The Chebiner and also the Rabbi of Padua, it's a city in Eastern Europe, they have a discussion. The person, the person is under, need to take an oath in a bed din. And his fellow said, are you ashamed of yourself to lie? And he says, I can take an oath that I'm saying the truth. And he says, if you do the kinyan, if you do the act of possession, I'm willing to do it. So he said, I agree, take an oath. And then the claimant saw that the defender is about to take an oath, he regretted and he said, no, I'm agree upon the kinyan. The question is, can you accept his harata or not? Because achrei kinyan, can you have an itchayvut or not? So the Machne Chaim was a rabbi in Hungary. He had a discussion based on that teshuva. Reuven is suing Shimon, that's using our language, for $10,000. Shimon denies it. And he brings Yaakov, let's say, another witness, that is a witness that Shimon took an oath. And then time passed by, and that fellow, Yehuda, is a new fellow suing Shimon, and the same thing, over 10,000. And he brings the same witness, which is Yaakov. So the question is, do you accept that? Because if Yaakov is lying, is not truthful, how do we ask him to take an oath and that here the long teshuva, the Machnei Chaim, when and where and how you're allowed to impose oath on a person. אמר רבי אסי, אמר רבי יוחנן, המוצא שטר חוב בשוק. So here, וכתוב בו הנפק, so we said several times that the word henpek is from the word nafak, which means that it's kiyum, it's a rectification of the bad din, that is real, that is not fake, is not mezuyaf. וכתוב בו זמנו בו ביום. And it's written there, evidently that it's written on the same day. Meaning the same day that it was found is the same day of that note. יחזירו לבעלים. So he needs to return it to the malveh, to the creditor. So specifically here in this case, we talk, the Mefarshim explained, based on what we studied in the previous daf, Tezayin Amud Bet, that it's because it's that particular day. And the Gemara continue with the reasoning, the logical reasoning. אם משום דכתב ללוות ולא לווה, if you tell me that it's the concern is because perhaps the debtor wrote the promissory note intending to borrow money, however he ultimately did not borrow, so that's not a concern. Why? הכתוב בו הנפק, because it's written there in the promissory note henpek, which means it was proved the bet din that he borrowed money, and therefore it's clear to us that the creditor, the malveh, lost that note. Because if it was in the hands of the one who borrowed, he will not allow to have kiyum shtar, to have the approval of the bet din. Ve'im mishum peiraon, and if we are concerned because perhaps there was a repayment, it's not an issue. Lifri'a bat yoma lo chayshina. We're not concerned when there's a repayment the same day that the loan was taken, because normally one will not take a loan for less than 1 day. And the whole idea of pri'a is not in the same day. The Pnei Yoshua expand on that and ask, we have the chazaka, ein adam porea toch zmano, that people usually do not pay during the period of the loan. So if you have a period of 30 days, if he's not para, stam alva'a 30 yom, a regular manner of loan, it was the statement of 30 days. So what's the specification here over bat yomah, that particular day? The Pnei Yoshua expand on those, they have the time, capability. Please read the Pnei Yoshua, is beautiful on this sugya. Now Rabbi Zera challenged what Rabbi Yochanan said. אמר לרבי זרע לרבי אסי, מי אמר רבי יוחנן הכי? Is that true that that's what Rabbi Yochanan said? That you're not concerned if it's the day of the lending the money, a person can pay the same day? Aha, at hu de amart mishmei Rabbi Yochanan, it is you, meaning Rabbi Zera, you said on behalf of Rabbi Yochanan, shtar שלווה בו ופרעו, meaning if a person has a promissory note and that promissory note expresses a loan that was taken between two parties and used that to borrow money, meaning that one who borrows money and wrote a promissory note for the loan and subsequently repaid the debt, ופרעו, אינו חוזר ולווה בו. He not allowed to go and reuse the same shtar, the same promissory note that he borrowed for another time. שכבר נמחל שיעבדו, because the lien on that promissory note that we use already forgiven. How? By virtue of the repayment. Meaning you use a promissory note only for that one-time loan debt that it was written. Now, it is both Rashi here and in Gittin 26b expand on that. Those who have the time and ability, I strongly suggested to see the Ktsot HaChoshen in two places. One is in Memchet, in 48, and also in Samech Hey, 65. Both of them he expand on this sugya a lot, with all the variation. So the Gemara asks, a mat, when is that possible? Rabbi Zera explained that the debtor can take a second loan. You may say that it can be the day after the first loan. Rashi here expanded and said leyoma achara. That's it means, like missing aleph. But anyway, so why does he specifically give the reason for the promissory note disqualification? That lien is already forgiven because it's earlier. It's the dated prior to the actual loan. That's called mukdam. Utnan, and we learn in Mishnah, Masechet Shvuot, chapter 10, Mishnah 5, Shtarei chov hamukdamin psulim, meaning if it's predated, is puzzle, it's not valid. So when you have those promissory notes that it's undated, so you cannot use them, and consequently you cannot tell me that Rabbi Yochanan here referring to a case where the second loan took place after the date of the first loan. So elalav b'yomei, it must be the same day. Alma par'ei inshei b'yomei. You have to say that it's a possibility that that people will sometimes, from time to time, repay the loan the same day that they take the loan. So the question is, to whom and why you return? Lama machzirim lamalveh shtar? Why you return to the creditor the promissory note? Because that basically contradicts. We said that Rabbi Yochanan said that you're not concerned about it. So Rabbi Asi explained this stira, this contradiction, and he said, Amar li, Rabbi Asi respond to Rabbi Zera, Mika mina lo pare klal. We didn't mean that people don't pay. The only thing I used the word shchichei, the lo shchichei inshei defar Rabbi Yomei ka'amina. We are talking about that is very uncanny, unusual, uncommon. It's not something that happens, not matsui, not so common that people paid the same day. So as a result, if you're talking here about the note is found on the same day that it was written, it is okay to assume that it's not yet repaid, even it is a remote possibility that has potential at paid. The Rav Sternbuch, which I have the privilege to be a neighbor in Hanof in Yerushalayim, he brought the Cheker Halacha, which also used, you refer to the Rav of Lizhensk in those days. He brings, based on our sugya, when you do the written of Mechirat Chametz, I know some Rabbanim, I have the privilege when I live in Baltimore to know the Rav there, to be required to have and Mechirat Chametz, on the sale document, even the hour. And it's based, try to base it on our sugya. It's a book called Cheker Halacha. Anyway, Rav Kahana explained it differently, and he said, Rav Kahana amar kshechayav modeh. Meaning here you talk about situation that the borrower agree upon that he did not pay, versus if he is not admitted, we can be concerned over the payment even the day of the loan. If you tell me that the case here is possible, that the purpose of stating that the note may be returned, that's so obvious. What's the novelty? What's the chidush? Why Rabbi Yochanan brings this halacha? So he said, Mahu de tema. You may think, Hai mifra par'ei, that if the one who borrowed the debtor admits that he owed the money and actually he paid it, V'hai deka amar lo pratia, and the reason he said I didn't pay it, Mishum dekabay meheder lemazfa beizimna acharite, because it's a possibility that he wants to go back and use the promissory notes to borrow money again. Velifshitei de safra chayesh, and he concerned about this small money that you pay for the scribe fee. You have to pay for another, to write another promissory note. And if you remember, we studied in Mishnah in Bava Batra, page 167b, the responsibility of paying the schar sofer, the scribe who write the promissory note, is upon the borrower. Again, if you have the time, I recommend you to see the Shulchan Aruch Harav Balatanya. In Choshen Mishpat, in Hilchot Edut Ushtarot Ushlashot, in Siman Seif Nun Gimel 53, he, the end of that chapter, expand Shulchan Aruch Harav Balatanya. Anyway, whole idea of schar sofer, Kamash Melan. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan come and teach us that we're not concerned. Im ken malvei gufei lo shavak, savar sham'ei berabananu mafsidili. So if that's this case, the creditor himself will not allow such a scheme. He will be afraid of such a situation. Why? Because when our rabbis, the sages of the Beit Din, hear about me, that I reuse the note, it will cause me to lose the payment that owed to me. Rashi explained that it basically it's possible because it's the Nimchal Shiabud. There's a Pilpul Acharifta on the Rosh that said that it's a problem to collect it from the borrower because he admitted it is not paid, but there is a discussion among the Rishonim, also you see it in some Acharonim, why you're not concerned about Knunia. Rabbi Moshe Weisblum, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, in several Teshuvot, based on this sugya, asked about the concept of umdena. If the creditor not agree, he brings many cases. You see it in many other teshuvot about kashruyot nowadays. You have different organizations that does kashruyot. There is a possibility to receive a heavy fine from the government if they don't follow certain regulation. So based on the umdena, can you trust the umdena that those manufacturers and those companies are concerned that otherwise they'll receive a fine from the government? Is that sufficient to trust that umdena or not based on this sugya. Anyway, Maishna dehadetnan. What's the difference between here and what we studied in the Mishnah earlier on page 12b? Matzash shtarei chov. אם יש בהן אחריות נכסים, לא יחזיר. So here you have one that he found promissory note. And as we said in the many poskim, you see it קצת החושן in סמ"ה and many others have a discussion what exactly the circumstance that one found a promissory note. But let's say in a simple case. So if you have written on that promissory note that is also property guarantee for a loan. So here they said, lo yachazir, you not return it to the creditor. V'ukimna, if you remember we learned there on page 12b, the reason, kshechayav modeh, meaning the liable party admits to the debt, that he didn't pay it. ומשום שמא כתב ללוות בניסן ולא לבא על תשרי. Because there's a possibility that it was written, he wrote the note to borrow the money in Nisan, but ultimately only half a year later in Tishrei he really bought it. והתלם יטרף לקוחות מניסן תשרי כלא כדין. Now he abused the system. How? Because he go and repossesses land from purchaser who brought the debtor land between Nisan and Tishrei. So what happened is he is entitled to collect land only from those who brought land from the debtor after the loan took place. So you see here that he caused the lien on the debtor's land to take effect, even the loan itself would not take effect only half a year later. And that means that it's happening here a very surreptitious, clandestine, unscrupulous, unfair deal. V'lo amrinan, because he collected that incorrectly. So v'lo amrinan, we don't say the imken malve gufei lo shavik. You don't say that if the promissory note was undated, the creditor himself will not allow the debt to use it, because you say to him, the amar lei, he said to the borrower, ktov shtara charina betishrei. So he asked the borrower, you know what, wrote another note for half a year from now, for Tishrei. Because if the Dayanim, the sages, hear about the fact that the date is incorrect, guess what they're going to do? They're going to disqualify the promissory note, and therefore I'll lose money. That's the whole concern of Yochanan explained, that the reason why the borrower doesn't want to reuse that promissory note, because the creditor afraid that they're going to disqualify the note. Amrei, the Rispan Hatam over there in the Mishnah on page 12b, Mishum de'itlei ravcha, because the creditor has benefited by using the promissory note, that he used the old one. The katarif lakochot Nisan Tishrei, that guess what happened? He's in the street, that he's using it to go after purchasers from that time and collecting correctly from them. So therefore, it is satisfactory to him, and he does not say anything to the debtor about using this promissory note. On the other hand, Hacha, in the din of Rabbi Yochanan, that since the creditor does not benefit from reusing the promissory note, Kevan deleit leravcha, he doesn't have any benefit from that. The creditor to use or reuse that promissory note, the sof sof shtara ha'idna ktiv, that because there is for him, he repossesses from purchases by means of the note that he cannot repossess by means of promissory note. And as a result, ma'ika de katarif lakochot. So he will not allow the debtor to borrow more money from him with promissory note, bishtar shimcha shibuto l'sharik, because the promissory note whose lien was forgiven, it will result only the risk that he have no potential benefit. So basically what we see here, based on the Rashi, if someone found a promissory note that the date was the same day of the loan, so since we're not concerned that he wrote from Nisan and didn't borrow until Tishrei, and the borrower agreed that he did not pay, so therefore you can return to the creditor, as Rabbi Yochanan said. But if you found a promissory note that it's earlier, it's predated to the day of the one who found it, we concern it may be that he wrote for Nisan and didn't borrow until Tishrei, and even that promissory note is disqualified. It may happen that allow the creditor to use it in order to possess from the purchasers incorrectly from the month of between the half a year between Nisan to Tishrei. Netivot HaMishpat and many others expand on this sugya, and they ask, what is really the problem with shtar shenimchal shi'abudo, with the promissory note that it's already over, that was paid or forgiven? If you go by the Torah midoraita, if Reuven borrow from Shimon, let's say 100K, so you have shi'abuda doraita. Even you can argue and say that even it was milval pay, that it was only verbal, there is a notion that said that his estate, nechasim b'shu'abadin, that his estate is already subjugated to the other party, to the creditor. And the whole argument we talk about yesh kol, yesh shtar, if the word is out, so you have the shtar, but if you don't have the shtar, if you don't have the promissory note, you cannot collect from the nichse mishu'abadin. So what's the chisaron here? The Netivot HaMishpat ask. You have shtar, you have the promissory note, and you have the kol. So the Netivot and others explain this, since there is a word out that one party borrow from the other party, it's also word out, yesh kol shu shilem, it's word out that it was paid. And therefore, you can have a person that heard on Sunday, guess what? Mr. A borrow money, and then on Tuesday he heard that he paid it. So therefore I can purchase a estate from the borrower, which means afilu sheyesh shi'abud, even though that there is a concept of shi'abud estate, that you can put a lien against the property. Lemaise, in reality, since is a kol sheshilem, since the Netivot explained that is a word out that it was paid, so therefore mekalkel halekochot, which means that shtar sheyesh bo shi'abud, if it's a promissory note that carries the right to of a lien, you cannot use. But as we said, Netivot expand on that. Another memra of Rabbi Yochanan in regards to parati, אמר רבי יחיא ברבא אמר רבי יוחנן, הטוען אחר מעשה בית דין. So here one who claims that he repaid the debt and it's already been established by the rabbinic court enactment, which means he claimed parati. You have this rabbinic enactment that obligated one to pay the debt. Take for example a case of marriage contract, and it's written clearly that the specific amount of money that the groom, the husband, commit himself to his wife, but unfortunately he has no witnesses. Page 17b, lo amar klum. So he said nothing. Now a little bit expansion of the Tnai Bet Din. Based on what we learn in several Masechtot, the idea of Matayim Zuz, it's a rabbinic idea when they write a marriage contract, there is a commitment, one of the Darkei Kinyanim, one of the transactions that they do between husband and wife, between at that stage a groom and a bride, is if she is a first time husband, a virgin, so it's a 200, if she's a widow it's 100. But the idea is the chiyuv ketubah, if the husband is no longer among the living, the heir are responsible to pay the ketubah. And if you remember, we learned in Tractate Ketubot, page 10, a disputation among the sages if it's a rabbinic or biblical. Now, there is an addition, it's called Tosefet Ketubah, which happens that the husband wants to add more to the amount that he commit himself from Ketubah. There is a question of Ma'aseh Bedin, if this is something that it's incorporated in that. So here, if the Chidushi that on behalf of Rabbi Yochanan said that if one claim that I already did something that the rabbinic court enacted, when it's come to the Ma'aseh Bedin Ketubah, lo amar klum, means nothing, that we don't take his word, we don't believe him. Even though the woman is after him, not because she have a note, a written text like the marriage agreement, but just a verbal, but we have the rule, my ta'ama, the reason, kol ma'aseh bedin keman denakit shtara bidei dami. When you have a rabbinic court enactment, when you have a document that was made by the Bet Din, we take it the same as one holding a promissory note in his hand against the claim of a repayment and is not accepted without supporting evidence. So in short, a person needs to bring a din and shovar. He needs to bring the witnesses and the document. Now, there is a discussion among the Rishonim, among the early rabbi, even b'makom shekodvim ketubah, even in the community, in the place that they write the ketubah, and she doesn't have a ketubah, and he claimed parati, and he said, I paid her. So, Neiman, he's not reliable to accept it. The late Dayan Weiss, the Minchat Yitzchak, explained it beautifully based on something that we understand in the term of modern days. Trace a situation that someone is writing a check, and he purchased something in the store with that check. And the owner of the store called him and he said, I can't find your check, bring him cash. The buyer said, sorry, I provide you the check, we made a deal, I take my stuff, you get the check. You lost, it's your problem, not me. Now, it's the same way as someone, Reuven did in Shimon a business, and he natano shtar ve'ibdo, and he gave him a note, a document, and the fellow lost it. So the whole agreement, the whole argument here, Shimon said to Reuven, listen, we make the deal, and I need to return the money I borrow or whatever involved with the transactions upon having you having your promissory note presented. So you can compare it in that sense to Ktubah, to marriage agreement, and you can say, how about Ktubah? Without the Ktubah you should not receive it, but the Rishonim, and then you see the Minchat Yitzchak brings down to our days the whole idea of Tikanat Rabbanan, the rabbinic enactment. He explained, Kol od she'en lo edim, as long as the person doesn't have a physical witnesses, so the woman will not reguah, she's not come down until she gets her money. So as long as he doesn't have edim and shovar, the witnesses and the note, is not ne'eman lomar parad, is not believed to say I paid. Based on that, I heard from the Rav Sternbuch, who used to be a neighbor in Har Nofes, who said, he talked about Rabbi Bava Metzia. He used to go to him before Piyontev, and remember that the Rav used to ask if the wife have the ketubah, if they come to be with them for Yontev, so Pesach, he asked, and they asked, why are you asking? And he said, because otherwise there is a problem to leave without the ketubah. But the whole idea, as soon as you see of the adarkta, which we call it also in ketubah, the irkesa, is because of that. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Rabba Rabbi Yochanan v'lo mishnotenu hizo. Isn't that something that we learn clearly in the Mishnah in Masechet Ketubot, page 88b? Hotzi'a get ve'ein imo ketubah gova ketubta. So what we learn over there, you have here a woman, she produced a get, a bill of divorce, and there is no accompanying marriage contract, so she collects the payment of her marriage. So the truth is, Tosfot said that it's enough for her to bring the witnesses. She doesn't need to bring the bill of divorce. But the derivative is that you have here Ba'aseh Bedin, and the husband is not ne'eman, is not believable to say I paid, even if his his divorcee doesn't provide the ketubah. Why? Because if it's after Maaseh Bedin, it doesn't mean anything. Amar lei, Rabbi Yochanan respond, and he said, and this is a significant line. We said a little bit in the introduction, the Akdama. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan, said Rabbi Chia bar Abba, this Mishnah, ilav didlai la chaspa lo mashkachat margarita tuta. Literal translation, he says, this Mishnah is actually the source of my principle, but I had not lifted up the shard for you, you will not have found the pearl beneath it. So what he tried to say to him is, if Rabbi Yochanan is not pointed out the principle, Rabbi Chia bar Abba will not have realized that it was underlining the ruling of the Mishnah. Now, why it's important? So here we have a beautiful Rabbeinu Tam in the Tosfot, that he tells us a secret how to become rich. Beautiful. Tosfot. ואם תאמר וכי דרך למצוא מרגלית תחת חלסים, you see a wide rock, and you see this shard, right? Now you go there, you hard walking, and beneath that, what do you find? You find pearls. So he said, ומפרש רבנו תם, רבנו תם tells us, בקרקעית הים אבנים רחבות ונראות כחרסים, ותחתיהם נמצאים המרגליות. רבנו תם tells us something that I heard from our producer, David Sleon. God bless you. He is originally from South Africa. And he told me that in a place called Kimberley, Kimberley, it was a place that the highest location in the world that people found, men found gold and diamonds, it's over there in the Kimberley. Now, think about those who found it. According to their tradition, it's appear nothing, but like Moshe Rabbeinu, he stopped, he dig in, and make an arduous effort to see what is the burning bush, and he saw Hashem there. So in that sense, they said in the book of Mishlei, they said that the person need v'yad charutzim ta'ashir. Mishlei chapter 10, Posuk Dalet, Posuk 4. That a person should know deep in his or her heart that there is a disguise. It's in a very hard word, there's a disguise there, pearl. Meaning, obviously, Birkat Hashem ta'ashir. In order for a person to make happen, he or she cannot sit lazy and expect things to happen. Uberachticha b'chol asher ta'aseh. They need to do an effort. And they said about in our Torah that the Almighty will brings, but the Mishlei in chapter 2, verse 4, they said uchematmotnim techapsena. That is like a matmon, that you have to dig in, you have to work hard, but under that hard labor will give you the pearl, which if you read a lot of stories, they tell you in the business world that the people who really average, most of the people who make their good wealth, obviously it's all from Hashem, but it's ta'aseh u'berachticha b'chol asher ta'aseh. A person needs to make an effort, and there are pearl under that. So here in our context, the derivative of Rabbeinu Tam, he said to us that, it reminds me of Reb Chaim Brisk. They said that after they hear the kushya, it sounds like very difficult, but then he explained the tiruts, and you see that there is a deepest in the kushya itself. Anyway, that the Mishnah itself, you don't have a raya, because you can interpret it sabaye. But here, Amar Abaye, my marganita, what exactly you found here underneath the pearl, Dilma b'makom she'en kodvim k'tuba askinan. Maybe we are speaking about a place that where they do not write the marriage contract. What does that mean? It was in the time of Chazal that they used not always to do it. It was some place that there is rabbinic enactment, but that's what they need to bring. You talk close to our days, people who survived the Russian communists when it was a persecution, was a tremendous amount of Jews that are afraid to carry ketubah in their homes, because they're afraid that they get caught, and then they knew that they are Jewish, or then they like in violation of the rules. So there is a situation, unfortunately, in our history that they didn't write the ketubah. They get hainu ktubta, that basically the bill of divorce is basically the ketubah, meaning the money that she collects upon receiving the get, that's the shtar ketubah. אבל במקום שכותבים כתובה, but in a place that they do write a marriage contract, אם נקרית הכתובה גביה, והילה לא גביה. If she is holding a marriage contract, then she collects payment. Otherwise, she's not collecting payment. אלמנה מן האירוסין, אירוסין meaning that she betrothed her husband as it used to be in a Talmudic time, money or document. So it's considering Eshet Ish, but she's still in the parents' domain. So by rabbinic law, she cannot have relation with her husband until they go under the final stage of the chuppah. And B'mai Gavya. So they said, Ba'adei mitat Baal. So the Shadash is by mean of witnesses to the death of her husband. let the husband's children, the heir, from whom she is demanding payment, claim and say, Litol velema pratia, they said I paid it, so she had no proof that she did not receive the money. Tema hachinami, so you can say here too, the same thing. Im ken ma'u ilu chachamim betakanatam. So what exactly the sages accomplished with their rules that a widow from betrothal, almana min ha'erusin, receives payment for a marriage contract, the heir can always exempt themselves. Amar lei, okay, before we go to Amar Makshisha, because we're running out of time, I just want to mention something that I heard from my teacher and mentor, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach Zatzal, and also from the Rav of Kreuzenburg. Based on our sugya, there is a problem if a woman uses a ketubah chadasha, they use a marriage contract that is total new, is a problematic because she can, if you tell me that she collects the money of her ketubah without the ketubah itself, so trace the situation, woman gets a new ketubah and a new ketubah, and she can recollect. So the whole idea of Shlomo Zalman Zatzal and the Rav explained that when you have a new ketubah is not a freshly, totally new, but based on our sugya is a drachta. A drachta is basically a tikkun, a hashlama, a kind of repair of the ketubah. Instead, become ketubah shenasta. You take the ketubah that was already written, so even if it's the next day, you cannot depend upon zichron ha'edim, that the witnesses said, I remember the whole details of the ketubah earlier. So basically the rules is you do not write a new ketubah, but you write only ketubah adrachta, and therefore it's some type, it's a sug ketubah, is some type of marriage agreement in a substitute of one that was lost. So therefore the woman can collect al pi eidim v'shtar ketubah adrachta, in a substitute of ketubah, her payment, her money, instead of having entered the domain of shtar mezviyaf by producing total ketubah chadasha. So as we said, they emphasize that when you need to do shtar adrachta, you using a adrachta, but not new one. Ketubah adrachta is kind of substitute, and then she can collect both by the edim and by the shtar adrachta the money for her ketubah.